We started with a bang with Annie, and then we pretty much have networked ourselves into an exhausted state. At this stage, according to my survey, these are the types of states of mind that are amongst us right now. From you, sentiments expressed. I enjoyed connecting with the overall goals and mastering the art of applying them at the day-to-day, placing myself in the bigger picture, understanding the nature of my own contribution. Encountering the potential to reignite partnerships and become more deliberate about my own work. And then there was the international contingent that are clearly feeling jet-lagged. And in response to my question, we had a hilarious series that started with, I gave at the office, speak to my staff. Sorry, what did you just say? We can't do anything until the election. I tweeted that. And lastly, loving meeting people, old and new. I don't mean old people, although old people are great too. At that point, I realized that public participation at this state of exhaustion is not going to get me through this. What I want to say to you is thank you for giving your time to come together. For many of you traveled here on the weekend. You've traveled far. You're going to travel far again. We have wonderful people that have come from all over the world. Enormous gratitude to all of you that are reaching across these distances to find partnership, to find meaning, to generate energy, to share ideas, and really get the ecosystem of this movement activated, directed, and passionately engaged. It's my great pleasure now to officially begin our final plenary together by introducing the one and only Dr. Jeremy Brown, who is a fugitive from his country with a long criminal record. Oh, sorry, I Googled the wrong bio. This Jeremy Brown is the president of Portland Community College and one of the co-hosts of our conference. Enormous gratitude to you for your leadership and support of this movement. A native of Manchester, England, he served a long and extraordinary leadership career contributing to higher education. He's clearly a man with a dedication to the mission, the purpose of higher education, has given his life to this purpose. We're very lucky to have him here today with us to share some of his thoughts. Thank you, Dr. Brown.
You always wonder when somebody's introducing whether it's going to sound like an obituary, and fortunately that wasn't the case. But there is a story, apparently, when I do come to the United States sometimes from being out of the country, people say, Jeremy Brown, have you ever lived in Nevada? And I'd say, no, never. And I said, that's just as well, because you wouldn't be here if you did. So this is the other Jeremy Brown, and I am president of Portland Community College, which proudly co-hosts this year's AASHE conference, along with Lewis and Clark College and Portland State University. And I want to thank you for your support for the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education and this national conference. We're thrilled that Portland was chosen to be the host city this year. It's a real feather in Portland's cap to be tapped as the host city for such a large event, the most powerful forum in North America for an exchange of ideas that empowers higher education to advance a worldwide sustainability transformation. But then again, this is Portland, and for those of you who are not Portlanders, you don't know that here all things green, sustainable, and environmental flourish. So there's no better place in my mind than Portland to engage these important ideas. The AASHE organizers have done a tremendous job to assemble what I think is a fantastic lineup of speakers, presenters, and activities over the course of 4 days. I'm sure when it's all over, they have plans to celebrate in style, relax, kick back, or do whatever they do, but let's take a moment just to thank them very much for all their hard work. Thank you so much. You know, as a relative newcomer to Portland, I continue to be impressed at how Portland's leadership and the greater community uphold sustainability as an important value, and they work collaboratively to address problems and create solutions. It's easy for us to take such collaboration for granted, to assume that other US cities are like-minded about such efforts. But for someone like me, who has lived elsewhere, is from somewhere else, allow me to say that a collaborative civic commitment to sustainability is not the norm. Rather, it's quite special and inspiring. And I'm extremely proud of the responsibility that we have assumed in this regard. It's natural, pun intended, for Portland Community College to be involved in such collective efforts related to sustainability. Since joining PCC just over a year ago, I've become increasingly inspired by the college's commitment to sustainability in our operations, in our curriculum, and in our daily lives at the college. Like most major initiatives, the extent of our success is dependent on the commitment of our leadership. And I'm really pleased to note that our board has embraced sustainability as one of its tenets, and that our strategic plan has sustainability as one of its guiding themes. PCC has developed green course outcomes, a sustainability focus award, and numerous trainings to build capacity amongst our instructors. We offer green team and service learning activities for students throughout the college. Our faculty, staff, and students penned a climate action plan in 2009 and recently updated that in 2013. A few years ago, taxpayers in our district approved a bond measure of $374 million for a program that promised a strong commitment to sustainability, with every new structure designed to be LEED certified at the level of gold or higher. On the national front, PCC is part of the Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council, a national organization working to advance sustainable purchasing in both the public and private sectors. We are the only community college involved in this leadership council, and one of 5 higher education institutions with membership on its founding circle. Internationally, the college has a place at the table of the Greater Portland Sustainability Education Network, which was named a regional center of excellence on sustainable education by the United Nations University this past year. There are only 3 such centers in the United States. All of this energy and passion and these many projects underscore a common objective: to harness the power of education to creatively raise awareness and find solutions for the environmental issues that we as a society face. We see environmental literacy to be as important as other literacies that educators help to develop in their students and in their communities. And so it is a great honor for us to partner with AASHE and the other institutions of higher education here today. I'm delighted and proud that PCC can join forces with so many dedicated individuals and organizations from around the region, the nation, and the globe on such a critically important theme. And on that note, I'd like to introduce one such partner, a leader in the field and our keynote speaker today, Rob Bennett. Wait, not there yet. Rob is the founder and CEO of Eco Districts and a recognized leader in sustainable cities movement. He has nearly 20 years of experience shaping municipal sustainable development projects and policy. His work stands at the intersection of city planning, real estate and economic development, and environmental policy. Prior to Eco Districts, Rob launched the Portland Sustainability Institute to accelerate sustainability policy and project innovation. He worked for the Clinton Foundation, supporting climate action in cities throughout North America, and advanced green development transformation initiatives in Vancouver, BC. It was his work in shaping green building and infrastructure strategies for such catalytic development projects such as the Lloyd Crossing, now known as the Lloyd Eco District in Portland, the Brewery Blocks and South Waterfront in Portland, and the 2010 Olympic Village in Vancouver, BC. All of these led to the creation of eco districts. Rob was a founding board member of the Cascadia Green Building Council and a board member of Reach Community Development, one of the Northwest's largest and most innovative nonprofit affordable housing providers. With a master's degree from the School of Landscape Architecture and Regional Planning at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, Rob has presented throughout the United States and abroad on topics such as green economic development, sustainable municipal innovation, and green building policy. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to this year's AASHE keynote speaker, Rob Bennett.
Dr. Brown, thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome to Portland, everybody. Is there anyone from UMass here? Go Minutemen. I have to tell a funny story. I was at UMass getting my master's in regional planning, and any of you from UMass know John Mullins? Oh boy, okay. Well, anyway, he went on to become the dean of the school, and he was the director of the planning department. And I was, in the mid-90s, developing what I thought was a really fun sustainability-related degree for myself. And of course, as an urban planning, you can choose from housing and transportation, community economic development, et cetera. But I really was interested in urban sustainability as it was being defined internationally by the Brundtland Report and a lot of work coming out of Europe. And John said to me, he was my advisor, and of course, sustainability was hardly a recognized word, and certainly didn't bring 2,200 people to Portland from universities alone to activate the agenda in the mid-90s. And he said to me, you know, that sounds nice. Have you ever considered the Peace Corps? That's really where you should go of this issue of sustainability. So he clearly didn't get it. I'm not sure I got it either at the time, but it's really, really heartwarming to see how much momentum this agenda and this what I consider a movement has created. And it's fun to be with all of you in this really dreary room. Sorry for that. There's a sandwich shop in the back, though, so we can grab a sandwich on our way out. To spend 30 minutes to try to close this session out and to talk to you about my passion, which is neighborhood development and district scale sustainability. I think we're kindred spirits in the work we do, and I want to thank and put a special shout out to the PSU folks who helped launch the Portland Sustainability Institute that ultimately became our organization. Jennifer Allen and Fletcher, Erin Flynn, I just was on a panel with her. The three of them have been very instrumental in the growth of our organization. We were attached to as part of a program of PSU for the first few years of our life. So we recognize the power of the university and our college system in not only being places of innovation when we look inwards to our own campuses and our own homes, but also the rich student and faculty work that goes together with that. We had a Portland pilot program for 4 years in which we activated, by my last count, over 100 student and faculty in that work through Oregon, mostly through PSU and University of Oregon, and a little bit of PCC as well. So I'm really happy to be here. So I'm obviously I'm between you and the bar, or you or the airport, you and dinner with friends, and certainly getting out of this room. So I'll try to keep my comments brief. Hopefully we can do, you'll come away understanding my passion for the work around district scale sustainability and of course how it interlinks with universities as in essence neighborhoods onto themselves in many cases. I'm also following Annie who kicked us off. I unfortunately wasn't here and unable to see her, but I've always loved the films that she put together and her work on helping make our consumer behavior understood and the profound nature of what that does to our planet. So I'm gonna obviously do my best to move from consumption into the development and the rehabilitation, and in some cases the creation of neighborhoods as centers of the green cities and sustainable cities movement. I've been doing this work for about 20 years, as Dr. Brown mentioned. I started as a neighborhood activist and community organizer. I was organizing around land use issues here in Portland. I started an unsuccessful, and you know, my bio, I've never heard my bio go on so long, and I can tell you my experience of failure is equal to my experience of having great success or middling success. But I started a homeless day labor program. Wild miss, sort of didn't work, let's put it politely. But I was working at the neighborhood level for about 3 years before going on to graduate school and then ultimately doing public policy for 8 years at the city of Vancouver and Portland. So I've worked at neighborhood scale at the community level. I've worked on public policy, and I've worked at the nonprofit world on working on the issues of district, neighborhood, sustainability, economic development, real estate, green infrastructure, et cetera. And so my brain works in a way that I understand, you know, I feel like I understand the interconnections of this, these efforts that we need to advance cities, but as we just talked about in the last session, it's very hard work. And I like to sort of start with this quote because I think we all need to give ourselves a collective hug now and again. You all do very, very hard work. You guys are the scrappy, passionate, highly strategic leaders who are trying to make those interconnections. In our work, you know, as Sam Jacob, an architect from Chicago, talks about, cities are not about the perfect vision. They're not about a singular idea. They're about the collision of all kinds of incompatible demands. And that's really the nature of our work, is we're faced every day with trade-offs. We have to link unholy alliances. We have to speak many languages, often in sustainability. And the job is to advance our society because our society desperately needs it. And in our work, we're focusing on the neighborhood as that catalyst for change to make our cities more habitable, more just, ultimately more sustainable. And campuses and universities and colleges and community colleges, they all represent that seed kernel of learning, of best practice, and the ability to look inward on how we do our work and how we impact our communities. The president of PSU, when he arrived, I think 5-7 years ago, constantly talked about the economic impact of universities in cities, and it's clear. You know, PSU and the other colleges, PCC, have a tremendous impact in our city, and all of your institutions do the same. So we have to recognize our special responsibility and role in this work. And the work we're doing is focused on urban regeneration. We call it urban regeneration as code or as shorthand for embedding sustainability into redevelopment work and neighborhood scale redevelopment work. Urban renewal is a tarnished phrase for good reason. We've been at urban renewal for 50 years trying to stem the tide of sprawl and disinvestment. We've left out whole parts of our society. We've made our cities and our communities poorer by the work in urban renewal historically. The good news is that we have so much attention coming back into our cities and really rethinking how we do development so that we get the co-benefits that the communities that have been left behind deserve, and ultimately we create more livable and more efficient and workable cities. But it starts in the neighborhood. So we're focused on urban regen, and when we say this, we're talking about a new model that's predicated on a deeper sense of collaboration and interconnectedness between those who make investments in this work. We're highly fractured, and you guys know this because every day your job is to glue together a very fractured environment at the universities and to overcome great odds in doing that. Our work is inspired by people like Majora Carter and others who have been toiling quietly in the neighborhoods and in campuses for many, many years, who have set the bar for us to recognize the wisdom exists in the neighborhoods. There is a win-win when you put coalitions together of labor, of social justice, environmental activists, and planners and development in the development community. And that there's a whole new flush of private investors who are also making a tremendous impact in neighborhood development. What I'm showing you here is that urban regeneration is a much more complicated environment than our traditional models of doing this. And someone like Tony Hsieh here, who is working in Las Vegas and putting his Zappos proceeds for the sale of Zappos to Amazon to rehabilitate downtown Las Vegas. He and other individual investors and major companies globally are investing in cities, or looking to invest in cities in unprecedented ways. And they don't necessarily and traditionally have a seat at the table. There's a lot of capital sitting on the sidelines. And then I think all of us fit into this category. We're the disruptors. Leif, I met Leif years ago when I was up in Vancouver. Tremendously effective disruptor at Harvard. We're the disruptors, and there's many of them sort of emerging every day in this space of sustainability, from those who are advancing big data to those who are thinking about the maker economy and how the sharing economy unleashes connections between community and has real economic impact. These disruptors are doing amazing things. IOBE in our backyard, I'll talk a little bit about Erin later. When she started, there was only a handful of crowd resourcing platforms. Now there's over 1,400 funding capital projects, either through equity or donations. WalkScore. Who thought WalkScore just a few years ago, when it was created, would be a major planning tool for cities to create 20-minute neighborhoods? And then ultimately, the WalkScore is now being correlated to the value of neighborhood the value of neighborhoods in very real and tangible ways. So these disruptors are part of our environment, but again, traditionally they're not part of the conversation about making our neighborhoods more sustainable or redeveloping our neighborhoods in the classic sense of real estate and infrastructure. And all of this is in the spirit and in the service of healing our communities. You don't have to walk far out of this neighborhood to see communities in distress. Every city has them. Portland is no different. And we have a tremendous amount of work to do. But as we like to say at Eco Districts, the zip code is the single major determinant of our quality of life in our society. Where you were born will have a major impact on how you're educated, how safe you ultimately are, the community connections or lack thereof, the generated wealth that you can create based on that community, the health outcomes. It goes on and on. So our neighborhoods are where the action is, fundamentally, from becoming a great society. And that's why we feel we need to really amp up the work and sustainability at the neighborhood level, because currently it's a very fractured environment, as I keep talking about. I won't go through the data. You know, the two data points that we hear at every college lecture today and every keynote is, we're over the 50% mark of cities being urbanized, so we're now officially an urban species, and that greenhouse gas emissions and environmental pollution is being concentrated in these cities, or the consumption in cities is directly correlated to environmental impact. So the action is in the cities. Our cities are changing. Most cities are growing rapidly. There's obviously exceptions in this country like Detroit and Cleveland and others that are shrinking, but on the whole, we're growing. We're not growing smart. We haven't been growing smart for many, many decades, but we're growing and we're making investments. And every investment that gets made every day is an opportunity for sustainability. When I was in Vancouver, I was helping develop a green building strategy, and there were 35 cranes in the air, and it drove me bananas because that represented hundreds of millions of dollars worth of real estate, and not one of them, of those that I saw, had a green building strategy in place. The public sector at that point in the mid-2000s was driving green building in Canada and British Columbia, but the private sector hadn't engaged. So that was hundreds of millions of dollars of lost opportunity cost, and every day in our universities, the same thing exists. We have to get in front of that money. We have to make sure that we're getting better integrated triple bottom line benefits. So districts are awesome places to demonstrate the value of sustainability, to dig in, to open ourselves up to experimentation and innovation. I know we talk about cities as labs and universities as labs, but it's true. We can't address at the municipal level the huge challenges in front of us if we don't dig in and do demonstration projects and show how it's done at a finer grain. The city of Portland has had a climate action plan for over 30 years. Not once have we figured out what that climate action plan needs to look like at the neighborhood level until a year and a half ago when we did a partnership with the C40 called Climate Positive, where we did the work to understand with Oregon Health Sciences University in Zidell on 50 acres of South Waterfront, where ultimately thousands of jobs and homes are going to be, what it would look like to be carbon neutral. So we have policies, coming out of our ears, but rarely have we thought about how to drive those into neighborhoods. So the neighborhood's an important place to scale and innovate because obviously innovation then allows us to understand what works and doesn't. And ultimately this is happening. Our neighborhoods, as I said, are killing us, literally killing us, and they're affecting the most at risk. We saw this with our storms in Katrina and Sandy. We see this in a very slow and methodical way in our cities over the last 50 years. We've literally stripped our society down because we haven't reinvested in our communities. So our neighborhoods are killing us, and yet our neighborhoods are the place where ultimately success will have to be proven out. And so how do you do this? How do we take this and this, which is happening every day? We have over $1 trillion in this country of broken infrastructure in the water sector alone. We are deficient. We are not paying our bills, nor are we investing smartly. And this poor pole that wants to be a bike rack, basic needs, right? Basic needs are needing to be filled, and there's a lot of creative ways that are not always capital intensive to get us there. And you guys know that because every day you are finding those creative ways to be successful. And there's a lot of activists and a lot of pent-up frustration in our communities. Any of you involved in your community association or local neighborhood association? Not many of you. It's actually for a good reason. I think there's a tremendous lack of feeling that we can be successful at the neighborhood level, and there's a lot of cynicism. And as Jason Roberts, who started A Better Block, says, if you don't show up, she will, and she's pissed, and she's fighting progress. She's often fighting good ideas. But we have a lot of citizen activists who feel very frustrated over the last 20, 30 years of trying to fight for change in their communities. And so we have a real disconnect between the investors and the investment decision-making and those in the community that have the wisdom and ultimately pay the price one way or the other. So how do we do this? And how do we get out of this sort of narrative, which is the sort of city is a dreary place, which is a very American narrative, that our agrarian sort of roots and our cultural sort of identity and markers sort of suggest that we have this, Blade Runner-like future that's in front of us, or we create these ridiculous sort of utopian visions of what the city, highly technological, technology will save us, and if you spend enough time in San Francisco, you start to believe that, there's an app for it, we're ultimately gonna, be saved by, applications and API. And then our urban designers, and I'm an urban planner by training, then, start to shrub up our future, they start to, add a little greenery to ultimately some very bad basic planning tenets. I don't think Jane Jacobs would feel that was a real success strategy right there. And the sort of definition of green is not obviously dependent solely on our, our environmental footprint. This is an integrated strategy about our quality of life. It has a lot to do with the social connections, the life on the street, the ability to love a place and feel connected. And it's not also just sort of saying, yeah, we're into social justice. And if you saw the research coming out of that the Urban Sustainability Directors Network just published, Angela Park wrote about about the sustainability movement being primarily a community of white folks primarily dedicated to an environmental agenda. We have to recognize sustainability is not that. It's integrated, and it needs to be a much more diverse and a much more integrated strategy. And I'm glad that Marcelo was here to talk to you about that. He's advising me, and he's a powerful voice for not only the demographic shifts that are happening in this country, but the power that comes with a much broader view around what sustainability is. So let's not talk about it in the context of empty slogans. How do you actualize it in the projects that we do? And our organization is trying to really advance that through a variety of very practical things. Our board of directors, our staff capacity, and who do we assemble to do this work? The social justice activists, the community development leaders, the urban sustainability policymakers, the real estate industry, the infrastructure industry. Those organizations and those sectors hardly communicate. They don't speak often the same language, but they're the ones who are making investments. And it's all in the bottom line for us, which is creating great neighborhoods. Great neighborhoods are the fuel of our work and ultimately the fuel of our society. So we have to get those sectors who are in essence responsible every day making key investments in our neighborhoods to work collectively together. It has to happen. Otherwise, we get the kind of results that we're getting today. And it's a lot of small things. One of the things I love about Portland, I've been here 22 years, is that it's a place to experiment. And Joe Courtwright recently published a paper about that we attract a lot of 25 to 35-year-olds, which is great. And then there's the mythology that they're all here and underemployed, and Portland's where you go to retire early. But that turns out that's not true. Our unemployment rates for that age bracket is some of the lowest in the country, 4.5%. Lower than LA, lower than San Francisco, lower than New York. So what's behind that? Well, it's not just because people are choosing sort of a quote unquote lifestyle. It's because they're actually building this stuff. The 25 to 35-year-olds, which are the coming up out of their academic and their trade work, are entering into the workforce. And here in Portland, they're really making a contribution. This is happening throughout the world and throughout cities across the country. And I think this is the best hope for us around sustainable neighborhoods, is that you can paint bike lanes, you can re-envision sidewalks, you can start local food, urban agricultural activities, you can do tactical urbanism and small real estate projects that have tremendous benefits about re-knitting the community back together. Some of the fundamentals, like schools and school performance, economic development, those are the big moves. Infrastructure, those are the big long-term moves, but we can do a lot to activate our neighborhoods in the meantime as those investments take root. Portland used to have 85,000 kids going through the Portland public school system in the 60s during the baby boom. We're down to 45,000. So we struggle mightily to protect our neighborhood school system and that infrastructure. I think if you had to boil it down to one thing on sustainable neighborhoods, neighborhood schools is fundamental. Perhaps a grocery store. What are the key ingredients that then become the important investments that then neighborhood stability can grow and a quality of life can develop? And I think what you see on the screen are people making those very small investments that ultimately mean something over time. And we are thinking outside the building. Obviously, I came from the green building world. I spent about 10 years there. And it was always so frustrating to do that work in a very myopic way. We were sitting there sort of, thinking about the four walls. We never really thought about the exterior public realm unless you had an urban designer and, neighborhood activists at the table. We have got to institutionalize infrastructure buildings and community action into sustainable neighborhoods. It's a huge market opportunity. I won't spend much time on that other than to say every year there's over 500,000 multi-block projects entitled in this country. 500,000. Hardly any of them are doing anything around sustainability. There's over 170,000 official neighborhood associations, urban renewal districts, business improvement districts. That's governance that exists that want to do something and in many cases are doing something. So we have a tremendous latent demand for sustainability. The question is, how do we get that woman who stands up and sort of takes the energy and the oxygen out of a room? How do we build that strategy? Well, first you got to go find the investors. This is not an effort, and from my perspective, about endlessly engaging your community in dialogue. It's about find the investors, and in your case, the university, who is putting real dollars into projects, who is lifting up student-led initiatives, get them around the table and ask some simple questions. Would we be better if we worked together? Could we leverage resources? Do we care about sustainability? Is change coming? When you start to ask those questions and you got the key investors, they tend to look at each other and say, wow, you know, we actually represent the leadership for this neighborhood. We can do work. We can certainly go engage the community, but we often start with an endless and exhaustive engagement strategy in a disempowered public process, and we call it good, and we wonder why we don't build neighborhood leadership and projects that are leveraged, because we're not actually working with the leveraged investors. In fact, most investors don't want to work together. Let's face it, resources and budget is power. And I can tell you, I've been around the table so many times over the last 20 years where they are holding on to theirs and they are not collaborating, even though it's in their best interest to. So that's the sort of dynamic that we have to address with eco-districts. And it starts, I think, with a call to action. One of the great things that the U.S. Green Building Council and the environmental activists who really stood that effort up did was invite many of us, some of us who were not designers and in the day-to-day of bringing buildings to life, invited us in and said, you can be a change maker. I got my chops out of graduate school as a green building policy geek in the city. I helped build a market transformation program for the city. I did my bit because I felt invited to that effort, and it was a great brand and it was very inclusive. And I know the university sector has played a tremendous role because they were invited and their expertise leveraged. So the first thing we need to do for eco-districts is create an awesome brand and create a call to action. And I hope all of us at the end of this talk and as you go forward will activate eco-district projects. You don't have to call them eco-districts, but I want to see all of us walk away today with a passion to making our universities model exemplar districts, and then the work that we do in our communities likewise. We have to create a global standard, and I talked a little bit briefly, I don't have a lot of time, but let me just say this. What we're talking about is akin to the corporate sustainability agenda that's been underway for about 20 years. We need a process and performance-based standard and framework to deliver these projects, because neighborhoods and districts and university campuses are a long play. And it's very simple. You need performance indicators that are rigorous. You're going to report on progress every year, transparent, rigorous, and consistent, just like corporate sustainability, and GRI and B Corp are required to do. And we're going to be about process. The engagement, the assessment work, ultimately the projects you stand up, and you're going to link them together, and you're going to start to make very tactical decisions about investments. That's what we're talking about with eco-districts and with our global standard, what we are currently calling the protocol. So that's step number 2. And the protocol is very simple, as I mentioned, 8 performance areas: equitable development, health and well-being, more traditional things you see in rating systems like mobility and ecosystem services, energy and water. But this is the first time we're asking district redevelopment projects to map their project against performance. You know, we're always looking at rating systems that are, you know, tailpipe solutions. Did you check the box, or did you? And there's a lot of great things in rating systems. But if you take a performance-based approach, and I imagine many of you are doing this in the universities, it becomes a much different conversation. It allows for innovation, flexibility, and driving projects, because ultimately those KPIs are what matters at the end of the day. And then process around governance and management with really strong road mapping in between as the glue and the key prioritization of projects is really fundamental. And then ultimately, like AASHE does, you create a network of leaders. You guys are a network of leaders. I've been involved in the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, an amazing group of leaders who are working together across cities and across issues. We're doing the same with eco-districts. So we have training programs, and we have our protocol. We have a North American pilot program we just launched called Target Cities, in which MIT and a group of the historic Black universities and colleges in Atlanta are participating in, and we hope we'll find out in another week or two if the University of British Columbia is participating. So we got 3 universities formally part of our 10-project pilot program, which is a project and a commitment of the Clinton Global Initiative. It's very exciting. Our simple back of the envelope math on it is it's over 1,300 acres of projects, and it represents about, in the next 5 to 10 years, about $500 to $1 billion worth of investment. So we hope through our modest nonprofit that we can help inform and inspire and create a network of leaders who are doing the work locally that can inform $500 million to $1 billion worth of work in the short term, and ultimately set their neighborhoods on a different trajectory around this issue of collaborative governance and collective impact. And we do things like our summit every year. I really encourage you, we just did our summit in DC in late September. It was a great event. It's all about district scale sustainability. So if you want to geek out on infrastructure, linked buildings, governance, public-private partnerships, just like you're geeking out here, if urban redevelopment and district scale sustainability is your thing, we encourage you to be part of our summit. And ultimately, it's all in the spirit of accelerating projects, right? And that's what, we who do this work ultimately get judged on. Sustainability directors in universities often have very key practical performance indicators around your work having a demonstrable economic benefit to your institution. Well, most people in this work are doing the same calculus. Of course, we're constantly trying to embed triple bottom line metrics and understanding and sort of elevating and the externalities and the other impacts that aren't directly line itemed into sort of utility savings equals FTE. But this is the work we have to accelerate. And the reason that we launched eco-districts and our former mayor launched the Portland Sustainability Institute as the precursor to this work was recognizing, again, the tremendous amount of investment happening in our neighborhoods, and we weren't leveraging against equity strategies, we weren't leveraging against public health and the social determinants of health agenda that was emerging. We were certainly doing pretty well on green building, and then green infrastructure was coming along. So we were sort of doing well in certain parts and totally ignoring other parts of the sustainability agenda. And so these become that place, and whether it's MIT or the universities and colleges in Atlanta or UBC, they have a special opportunity to start linking what's been very different and very diverse and often sectors and professionals that do not work together. Portland State's lucky they have the Institute for Sustainable Solutions as an integrator. Every university needs an integrator, and you guys, I know, represent a lot of that integration. Of course, PSU was very lucky and very effective in getting a very significant amount of money from the Miller Foundation to do that work, because that often and is an important tool to leverage that integration across disciplines and across the faculty, students, and administration. How many minutes do I have, Megan? 5 minutes, okay. I just wanted to end with a couple projects, a couple stories. This work is about building more connectivity and more very clear roles and relationships and work between this complicated landscape that shows up to do district scale sustainability. And as Jan Gehl likes to say, people make cities, not buildings. So when we start with real estate, and Aaron Flynn just talked about this in our session before, you end up having a real estate conversation. But if you're talking about, in this case, the health and well-being of the community and the university, how the university becomes a center of excellence and innovation, how you start to link investments to have co-benefits and start to map the real economics of the investments, the broader triple bottom line economics, it's a much different conversation. And you no longer are having conversations primarily with real estate and infrastructure and municipal agencies responsible for entitling and co-building or sometimes building that infrastructure. Because I can tell you, that's where a lot of these conversations have happened over the last 10 years. And they're not a very interesting conversation to be had, to be quite honest. You get a little eco-bling going, you get some green buildings, a little green infrastructure, but that's not really where the energy is. The energy is in the innovation, the life on the street, the small makers that are occupying those workspaces, that are opening up restaurants and shops. It's the people who are connecting with their community, who are reimagining and ultimately reordering how transportation gets done because they're using the sharing economy platform to do the work. So scaling up green buildings, awesome opportunity when you're doing buildings to really think about the innovative projects. We had a project at PSU that was a total failure, but it was a great process. It was trying to build the most efficient green building on the planet. It would have had the best EOI on energy. It was going to be zero waste, zero carbon. And it brought together about 40 faculty from the university system of Oregon to work on that project. So catalytic, juicy, signature projects become places to bring together a diverse set of faculty and researchers and partners, public-private partners, to do a project. That project failed, but in so many instances, I think it's a success because it helped us define what we were doing with the eco-district in PSU. It brought together a lot of faculty that are still working together through the Oregon BEST program, which is a technology consortium around green technology. So these projects, even when we swing for the fences and they fail, often bring together new partnerships that live on. And finally, smart and humane infrastructure. It's really about the humanity of the infrastructure, not just about the environmental performance. A couple projects here in Portland. I hope you guys get the chance to go see the brewery blocks. So the brewery blocks was sort of our first eco-district. This thing was launched in 2001. The long and short of the brewery blocks, 5 square blocks, mix of rental housing, for sale product, an arts center was created, new market tax credit, a very ingrained public-private partnership predicated on a green development strategy around solar, around stormwater, and around shared energy, and shared parking and multimodal transportation. That was the most successful real estate transaction in the history of the city when it sold a few years ago. Wildly successful. And now it's spawned a concentration of platinum buildings in the neighborhood, which is the largest concentration of platinum buildings in the city. In essence, creating an eco-district based on this catalytic project in the middle that had significant commitment to infrastructure. In South Waterfront, it's really about infrastructure. It's about that integration between transit, multimodal, bicycle, pedestrian access, and of course the new Telecom Bridge, which is our first new bridge in Portland in a generation. So many of these projects really were real estate and placemaking projects. The new next generation of eco-districts, and I'll end with this, are projects like Lloyd Crossing, which is in this neighborhood. And if you spend any time in this neighborhood, it's a tough neighborhood to get excited by. It's an institutional setting. It's got the convention center. It's got the sports arena. And it's really suffered from being a place that had housing and people. Well, this project, which is a 4-block project, which is one of 3 phases in which a private developer is doing a mixed project. A couple cool features: the largest bike sharing platform in the city's history, 1,200 slots. The Lloyd Eco District, which is a formal nonprofit, is guiding this work, and they're going to have an office on the ground floor of this building or this project to help advance issues of water, waste, other issues of sustainability. They have an integrated infrastructure. Again, they're using transit and bikes. But for the first time, we're linking the buildings in a coherent way. So there's a black water treatment facility that's saving over 60,000 gallons of water into a very constrained infrastructure in that neighborhood. It's our first multi-block black water distributed energy and water system in the city's history. So a privately led development is having impact. The university's been engaged in this project, and it's been a really great learning project. And then finally, I'll leave you with the Vancouver Olympics, because even in a city like Vancouver, the power of the district and the power of innovation and working at the neighborhood level is reaped benefits. So I was up there for 2 years in the mid-2000s when we were doing all the infrastructure development work. We ultimately advanced the project to the point where 9 public policies came out as a result of the Olympics in a city that was awash in sustainability innovation. We retooled how surface water ultimately gets worked at the district level and regulated so that the water, which is obviously traditionally piped underground, was brought to the surface, embedded into a park, and now is a center of habitat and learning and play for kids and adults alike from the city. So they created and elevated that sort of hidden asset to the surface, They saved money on the Great Pipe, and they ultimately built a beautiful park and a beautiful sort of ecosystem service agenda for that project. We built a district energy facility, the first of its kind in the city. The green building strategy would have gotten us partially towards carbon neutrality. This got us 60% towards carbon neutrality. And now today, 5 years on, it has an ROI of about 7.5%, and it's outperforming the utility tariff. So it's cheaper energy in this neighborhood, mining wastewater heat. So the power of collaboration in both those instances, the Lloyd District and in the Olympic Village project, and many, many projects that we study internationally, it's all about the leadership that shows up, the key industry leadership, the city, steady hand, and then the governance that gets created. And in this instance, in Lloyd, they have key performance indicators, year in, year out, that they're responsible for mapping. And that's really the difference between urban renewal of a generation ago and eco-districts and urban regen now. It's an agenda I think you all understand explicitly. It's about performance, it's about leadership and linkage, and it's about being as creative as hell and keeping to the agenda as best we can, recognizing leadership changes, but if you build it into the infrastructure and you lead by example and ultimately teach those who come behind, it will endure. So thank you very much. Welcome to Portland and happy travels. Thanks.
We don't have time for questions, unfortunately, but Rob very kindly offered to go over there and to huddle with you in a few minutes. Now, I know that several of you have some appointments at 4:45, network meetings, etc. We have two important final steps that will not take us more than 10 minutes. The first is to collectively invest in the currency of gratitude. I want to ask all of AASHE's staff that are in the room with us today to come up on stage. Stephanie Herrera, Marta Figueros, Alison Jones, Marguerite Williams, Ada Phillips, Megan Faye, Zanaza, Monica, Chris, Data, Nikia, Skylar, Andrea, Ben, Bob, Chris. Now, stand up and throw all the gratitude and energy that you feel. These people, if you've ever organized a wedding for 2,100 people, if you ever tried to do that, you can imagine the work they've put into this. I also invite any of you that want to be spontaneous hug ambassadors to greet them with a hug as they leave the stage. Thank you for your work. It's now time for our final moment. I want to welcome onto the stage Chancellor Jackie Johnson, University of Minnesota, and Chair of AASHE's board to talk about what's next year.
Thank you. Thank you. I really am the one standing between you and the drink, and I get that, so give me just a couple of minutes. It is an honor and privilege for me to serve as chair of the AASHE Board of Directors, and as you know, if you've been listening, I am also proud to serve as Chancellor of the University of Minnesota Morris, where we are powered by the wind and the sun, heated and cooled by corn cobs and mixed prairie grasses, and led by students seeking change. So, I hope that you will return to AASHE's annual conference next October. As much as I've loved AASHE 2014, as much as I've loved AASHE Portland, and it has been grand, I am especially looking forward to AASHE 2015. And first, since it will take place in my home state, Minnesota, and second, since AASHE 2015 will be co-convened with, literally alongside another group, the Club de Madrid, an organization comprised of 100 former heads of democratic states, presidents and prime ministers from around the world. Club de Madrid is holding its annual conference in Minneapolis alongside of us at the same time as us, and its theme is Democracy in a Sustainable Future. At their request, and given the compatibility of our interests, we are co-convening for our work together next year. So please plan now to come to Minnesota. And I'm pleased to announce the winner of the 2015 registration-free covered registration. I think I've got that right. It's Sean O'Rourke, Director of Sustainable Design at Boston Architectural College. I don't know if Sean is here, but lucky you, Sean. Is he here? Is he here? Yes, so please plan now to come to Minnesota. I'm sorry that we can't promise you days of rain, but oh, and I'm also going to promise you that it would be a highly unusual event if it snowed in Minnesota in October. It has happened, however. We think that parkas rather than umbrellas might be in order. And we have a welcome committee already convened from Minnesota, from Wisconsin, and Iowa. Many of them here at this conference, many of them here right now. Woo! Thank you. Ready to welcome you, and there will be more. We also have a group of campuses in and around the Twin Cities already committed to sponsoring and co-hosting this conference, including Carleton College, Concordia, Macalester College, my alma mater, and of course the University of Minnesota with its 5 campuses all across the state. And if you don't know about us, here is a 2-minute video to introduce you to Minnesota's Twin Cities, Minneapolis, and St. Paul. Roll it. So thank you again for being here, for your leadership, for all the good work you do in the interest of creating a sustainable and resilient present and future, and we'll see you in Minneapolis. Thank you.